Good evening. My name is Kate Contino from the MTA. I will serve as this evening's hearing officer for this virtual public hearing, the sixth of 8 virtual hearings, including 2 satellite hearings to provide the public with the opportunity to comment on the proposed changes in MTA fare and tolls affecting transportation on MTA subways, buses, commuter railroads, bridges and tunnels, and the Staten Island Railway. To make the public aware of these hearings, advertisements were published in 13 print media outlets, including multilingual outlets throughout the region. Notice of these hearings were also published in press releases posted on the MTA website, along with multilingual signs and digital displays in stations, buses, and trains. The MTA also provided notice of the hearings on social media. The MTA's Fare and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings, describes these proposals in detail. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we are conducting this meeting virtually via Zoom's online platform and conference call feature, with the live stream available on the MTA Fare and Toll Hearing website. Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.76 permits the MTA to conduct these fare and toll hearings remotely. This hearing is an opportunity for the members of the public to comment on the proposals. Members of the MTA Board of Directors and senior staff are here to listen, so board members will be listening, not commenting. MTA subject matter experts are available to answer your questions in the Zoom Q&A function this evening. The Q&A function is available only if you are logged into the Zoom webinar online, and it is located on the lower portion of your Zoom window. If you are attending via Zoom online, type your question into the Q&A function, and a subject matter expert will answer your question if it is deemed to pertain to the subject of this hearing. In addition to the remaining virtual hearings, there are several other ways you can provide comment, ask questions, or make requests. We encourage the public to comment via the Fare and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings. You may also send a letter to MTA Government and Community Relations, Fare and Crossing Changes Virtual Public Hearing, 2 Broadway, New York, New York, 10004, or call the public hearing hotline at 646-252-6777. Telephone agents are available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. I should emphasize that every bit of public comment, including spoken comments today and at other hearings, all correspondence, emails, phone calls, and comments will be transcribed and incorporated into the official record and provided to all the board members so that they can review them prior to final consideration of the fare and toll proposals. For the record, today's date is December 9th, 2020. The time is now 5:35 p.m. Now let me briefly describe the procedure for today's hearing. I will call the names of people who have registered to speak in the order which they are registered. The one exception here is that if you have already spoken at a virtual public hearing during this round of hearings, you will be moved to the end of the queue after all registrants who have not spoken at previous virtual public hearings have had an opportunity to speak. We opened registration for today's hearing on Monday, November 23rd, 2020 at 10 o'clock a.m., and registration closed at 5 p.m. yesterday. We will remain here until all registered speakers are heard. All participants will be muted upon joining the Zoom webinar. When your name is called, please enable your camera and microphone by clicking the camera and microphone icons on the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will give you 10 seconds to turn on your camera and microphone before moving on to the next speaker. In the event that your name is called and you are not present, we will read your name again in the order it was initially called at the end of the list of pre-registered speakers. We will close the proceedings 15 minutes after the last name is called once we exhaust the list of speakers. When you begin speaking, please provide your name and any affiliation you wish to announce so that we have it for the record. And this is important so that we can be fair to all speakers. We ask that you keep your remarks to our limit of 2 minutes. The countdown clock on the screen will provide auditory and visual cues when there are 30 seconds remaining to conclude your remarks. If you run out of time, remember you can submit complete written testimony to supplement your oral testimony. CART captioning and American Sign Language interpreters are available at this hearing. To access captioning at the bottom of the screen, select CC, and you will be able to turn on or enlarge the captions based on your preference. You can also view the entire transcript for context if needed. Users will not need to adjust their screens to see ASL. Again, I want to note that in addition to the remaining virtual hearings, there are several other ways you can provide comments, ask questions, or make requests. We encourage the public to comment via the Fair and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings. You may also send a letter to MTA Government and Community Relations, Fairs and Crossing Charge Virtual Public Hearing, 2 Broadway, New York, New York, 10004, or call the public hearing hotline at 646-252-6777. Telephone agents are available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Thank you all for listening to all of that, and now let me introduce the MTA Board of Directors and senior executive staff that are here with us today. From the MTA Board, we have Commissioners Albert, Barbas, Brown, Calisi, Glucksman, Herman, Mahaltis, and Tessitore. MTA leadership is represented this evening by MTA Chairman Pat Foy, Bob Ferran, Sarah Feinberg, Craig Cipriano, Phil Ang, Kathy Rinaldi, Danny DiCrescenzo, and Jana Lieber. I will now turn it over to MTA Chairman and CEO Pat Foy for opening remarks.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you all for being with us virtually this evening as we continue the MTA standard biennial review of fare and toll policy. We recognize that this year is anything but standard. The pandemic has affected and impacted us all in profound and lasting ways, which makes this process this year all the more complex and challenging. Since 2011, the MTA has implemented fare adjustments roughly every 2 years, and a proposed change in fares and tolls with a 4% revenue yield, equal to 2% per year, has previously been included in next year's budget. To be clear, the current fare proposals are not intended to address our current financial crisis caused by COVID-19. As you know, as a result of COVID-19, the MTA is facing the worst financial crisis in its history, far exceeding anything we've ever dealt with in the past, even the Great Depression. Because of precipitous declines in ridership and revenues, we're facing our projected $16 billion deficit over the next few years. We have aggressively sought additional emergency aid from the federal government to fill our budget gap, but have so far been unsuccessful. The election of President-elect Joe Biden has given us hope on that front, but we are still facing the prospect of divided government in Washington, which could threaten the progress of another stimulus package with enough support for what the transit agents, industry, and the MTA need. So we must plan for the worst and hope for the best. This means we have some very tough decisions ahead, which could include service changes and reductions in positions and a continued freeze of the MTA capital program. To be clear, we don't want to take any of these actions, but our dire financial outlook gives us no other choice if we don't receive significant federal aid. We are committed to reviewing a wide variety of options to find the best way forward and adjusting plans as needed based on the latest developments. For the topic at hand today, the biennial fare and toll policy review, our goal is to minimize impact on New Yorkers in these difficult times. Still, we know that any increase will hurt New Yorkers, especially those in areas who depend on the MTA most. It's clear that this is one of the most uncertain and challenging times ever, not just for the MTA, but for all New Yorkers. We appreciate you taking the time to make your voices heard on these proposals. This is a tough time for New Yorkers, and we remain dedicated to keeping this region moving, as our employees have done tirelessly and heroically this entire year. The MTA remains on high alert and will do everything we can to protect the health and safety of our customers and employees as we continue navigating through uncharted waters. We look forward to hearing from all of you tonight. Thank you for participating.
Thank you, Chairman Foy. Tonight we have 70 registered speakers. As a reminder, if you have joined the Zoom under a name that is not what you registered to speak under, please identify yourself with the name used for registration in the Q&A function. When your name is called, there will be a brief transition to allow you to turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. We will now call our first public speaker of the evening. The first speaker is New York State Assembly member Amy Paulin.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, okay, good. Thank you all. My name is Amy Paulin. I'm a state assembly member as well as chair of the Assembly's Committee on Corporations, Authorities, and Commissions. This evening, I am speaking on behalf of the entire Westchester and Rockland Assembly Majority Delegation. Thank you for your careful consideration of the impact of possible fare and toll structures on the many people who rely on public transportation to get to school, to medical appointments, or to work. The challenge before us is enormous. The COVID-19 pandemic has decimated the transit system. Due to the pandemic, ridership has decreased by nearly 72% on subways and by about 80% on the commuter railroads. Because farebox revenue makes up nearly 40% of the MTA's operating budget, these low ridership numbers have had an enormous negative impact on the MTA budget. However, reducing fares, as has been suggested by some, will not lure people back onto public transportation and drive these ridership numbers back up. Instead, the focus must be on those who are currently taking public transportation every day, the essential workers and low to moderate income workers who must use it to get to work, putting their health at risk. Although work habits in some industries have changed, maintaining reliable, frequent, and regular service across the system is paramount to ensure access for everyone. Without it, how will the nurse living in Rockland County get to her job at the hospital in the Bronx? The rest of our statement will center on the needs of the essential and low to moderate income workers and how we can best help them, especially during this difficult time. The current fare structure does not adequately accommodate these workers who have no choice but to take public transportation daily. In the New York City transit system, it's cheaper for these regular subway and bus riders to pay per ride than use a monthly unlimited Metro card because it is based on 46 rides and they're taking only 40 to 42 rides a month to get to and from work, not taking additional trips in this climate. The cost of the monthly unlimited Metro card must be reduced to take this new reality into account and make it cost effective for these workers. Similarly, the fare structure for the commuter railroads does not adequately take workers' needs into consideration. The price of the monthly ticket should not be increased since it is used by many essential and low to moderate income workers because it provides a 50% discount over purchasing 42 single ride peak tickets. However, more monthly ticket options should be offered to accommodate the varied workforce and schedules such as monthly off-peak tickets.
Please conclude your remarks.
Yes, I will just say that in addition to accommodate, those who have said that the 7-day used primarily by tourists, those single fare are used, this can be accommodated by changing that structure. I want to thank you all. I will leave the balance of my remarks with you. And please, keep our trains running. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be New York State Assembly member Judy Griffin, followed by New York State Senator Alessandra Biaggi. There will be a brief transition as you are enabled to turn on your camera and microphone. Please make sure that once your screen updates, your camera and microphone are enabled, and then begin your remarks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Pat Foy, President Phil Eng, and the rest of the MTA board. I spoke last week about my opposition to the potential fare increases. And of course, I didn't have time to express my opposition to the flat fare, the flat fee that would be an unfair and disproportionate increase to commuters that live in my district, which is in southwestern Nassau County. I represent Assembly AD 21, which is a very big commuter area. People move to this area just so they could commute to New York City because we have very close proximity. The ride is like 30 to 40 minutes. So they moved here to live close to the city. They already pay higher taxes. They pay more for their house. And now they would have to pay the same amount as someone that lives way out in Suffolk County. And everyone knows if you live in here, your railroad trip should be cheaper than if you live out in Spionk. And so I think these commuters in my district have the potential to have a fare hike and also a hike because of the flat fee. And I know that we are on unprecedented times. We have very challenging fiscal challenges all over the place, but I don't think this is the time to hurt our commuters, hurt our essential workers. The people that are still traveling the trains need to travel the trains. They can't work remotely, and it just isn't appropriate to have them pay more money. And likewise, we want to get people back to commuting, but a fare increase and a flat fee that we would have to pay here in Nassau County would unfairly charge people, and people would likely maybe not use the railroad. In my district, people would be forced to pay $10 to $50 more for a monthly ticket if this flat fee went through. So I really encourage the MTA to find some money elsewhere. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be New York State Senator Alessandra Biaggi, followed by Deputy Public Advocate Kashif Hussain.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Thank you, Chairman Foy, members of the MTA board and other MTA leadership for the opportunity to testify today. I don't have to remind you all, we are all living through this, and that is that our public transportation system is at a crossroads, and the decisions that we make now will determine the future of the MTA and of our city. It is of the utmost importance that the voices of all communities are heard and considered, especially the communities of color and the low-income communities I represent in the state Senate, who have borne the brunt of the pandemic and could face the greatest impact if the MTA proceeds with the proposed fare increases and service cuts. Although I understand and am very clear about the dire economic circumstances that the MTA is facing and the urgent need to raise revenue, raising fares is not the answer. I strongly oppose any increases in fares, including the proposals to eliminate monthly or 7-day unlimited Metro cards, which will undoubtedly have a disproportionate impact on the essential workers who rely on the subway and bus systems. And while many of us have been able to work from home and limit our travel, essential workers remain reliant on public transportation to get to work every single day, at a time when we are already asking them to sacrifice their health and safety and their lives to keep our communities functioning. We cannot expect these workers to pay increased fares. Several of the MTA's proposals, including increasing express bus and city zone Metro North fares and increasing tolls for Easy Pass users, would also target essential workers and residents in the Bronx who have to rely on these buses, Metro North, and cars because of limited subway access in their communities. I also want to be clear that our communities cannot accept proposed cuts to service. And lastly, it is long past time for the MTA to restore 24-hour service. As a legislator, I stand ready to vote in support of equitable revenue raisers so that we can address many of the issues that we face, especially the budget crisis and deficit, so that we can support the MTA. Also join the MTA in calling for significant additional funding from the federal government. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Deputy Public Advocate Kashif Hussain, followed by Trudy Mason. There will be a brief transition as you are enabled to turn on your camera and microphone. Please make sure that once your screen updates, your camera and microphone are enabled, and then begin your remarks.
Good evening. My name is Kashif Hussain, and I serve as the Deputy Public Advocate for Infrastructure and Environmental Justice in the Office of Public Advocate Jumaane D. Williams. I want to thank the MTA for holding this meeting and for giving the Public Advocate's Office the opportunity to speak. I'll be blunt. we should not be having this conversation right now at the time when the New Yorkers' pockets are hurting like never before and MTS service is declining. The MTS proposed rate hikes and further reduction in services are unconscionable. As everyone here knows, public transportation is a lifeblood of this city's economy. Increasing barriers to access will simply further the fiscal burden for working people and stem any efforts for economic revitalization. At a time like this, we should be looking to further transit accessibility, not worsening it. In this aim, I urge the MTA and the New York City and the state government to expand the Fair Fares program by doubling the estimated 100 million expenditure on the program in fiscal year 2022 so that the eligible New Yorkers are able to ride subways and buses free. Moving forward, we must allow more New Yorkers to benefit from fair fares by continuously raising the eligibility cap. Austerity cuts here are being framed as inevitable, but they're not. The federal government must pass the stimulus that is reflective of the disproportionate effect that this virus had on New York, as well as New York State's status as the country's largest contributor in federal taxes. Further, the state must contribute necessary funding through revenue raisers that require the wealthiest New Yorkers to contribute their fair share, such as restoration of the stock transfer tax and closing the carried interest loophole. With this necessary funding and commitment to progress, New York can use this moment to transform the MTA into a fully modernized transportation system that prioritizes affordability, accessibility, safety, and equity. Let's meet the moment with the boldness it requires. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak this evening. I greatly appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Trudy Mason, followed by JP Patafio. The next speaker is Trudy Mason.
Hello, hello.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've been having so much trouble, but anyway, can I start now?
Yeah, please begin your remarks.
Okay, I'll start now. My name is Trudy L. Mason. I am speaking today as a member of the New York City Transit Riders Council, as well as someone who has lived through many previous fair hearings when I was the MTA's Director of Government Affairs and Community Relations. However, none of those prior hearings on raising fares has ever been held while the sword of Damocles in the form of drastic service cuts was hanging over the heads of subway and bus riders. These are not, quote, normal times, unquote. So I strongly believe that this board should not proceed as it has in the past. Rather, in this, quote, new normal, unquote, it should wait a while longer for any fare raise consideration, since a stimulus package from Washington is anticipated, which could make service cuts unnecessary. Although we all know that the current federal administration refuses to do anything more for us, there is indication today that bipartisan talks between the Senate and the House are reaching fruition for a stimulus package that includes transportation funds, which will last until the new administration is able to act. And our federal government will be led by a professed transit advocate who has pledged support for the nation's transportation needs. This is the reason I hope that you will agree that it is in our best interest to not consider any fare raise at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be JP Patafio. As a reminder, if you have joined the Zoom under a name that is not what you used to register to speak under, please identify yourself with the name used for registration in the Q&A function.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
please begin your remarks.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to say that I'm JP Patapio, Vice President of TA Surface, and I'm here on behalf of Local 100 and Tony Utano. I'm with the people that move New York, the essential of the essentials, bus operators and officers of TA Surface. And we want to make it very clear, there should be no fare increases, and the board needs to table this motion. It's just unjustifiable to raise fares during a pandemic when the essential workers depend on buses to get them to where they gotta go. Last March and April, 850,000 essential workers depended on these people here to get to work every day so that this city would stay open. And now fare increases and service cuts are gonna threaten everyone in New York City. This is a very short-sighted plan. You need to table these fare increases and service cuts. You need to find alternate sources of revenue. And you need to look to the future, because come June, we're hoping to start to get out of this, and we don't need bus service and fare increases that are gonna wipe out the greatest transit system in the world, New York City Transit. So we are telling you, table it, go back, think about what you really need to do. You gotta find additional sources of revenue, the stock transfer tax, the Amazon surcharge, the gas tax. You need to do this. This is your responsibility. These men and women here, we moved New York when New York was on its knees, and we moved the essential people that had to keep New York City open. So we're telling you today, table the fare increases and service cuts. All right.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Olivia Drabzik, followed by Henry Slim.
Hello.
Please begin your remarks.
Sure, hello. My name is Olivia Dropsic. I am a special education teacher, resident of Staten Island, and candidate for City Council in District 51, Staten Island South Shore. Thank you for providing this space for public comment and for all of the outreach to ensure that it was truly a public hearing and forum. We can all appreciate the unprecedented financial crisis our city is facing and the dire budgetary circumstances under which the MTA finds itself, especially those from the district who represent a disproportionate number of the thousands of proposed layoffs like mine. We must also appreciate that as most New Yorkers are working and learning from home, overwhelmingly those using public transit and services are doing so to make it to the front lines, to essential jobs that for many families have become the sole income keeping them afloat. I ask that you reconsider leveraging negotiating power on the backs of these hardworking New Yorkers, and namely Staten Islanders who've already spent their pre-COVID days locked into one of the longest commutes in the country, who are already all too familiar with navigating transit-starved districts and who live in the only borough posed with a fee when traveling through to the others. 2 to 2.5 hour long commutes one way on multiple modes of transit are not uncommon from the South Shore of Staten Island. Faced with limited access to convenient bus and rail services, and due to the fact that sometimes we just want to get home in time to eat dinner with our families, many Staten Islanders with the option drive. As we navigate this crisis, we should be seeking ways to incentivize ridership and offer relief to communities, especially those who have bore a greater burden during this global crisis. Instead, there are considerations for an increase in local under express bus fare, despite even further cuts in services, and an elimination to the resident discount, which would simply not be viable for hardworking families, $5,000 a year just to get to work. We ask that you propose making these changes, push the incoming administration to invest in New Yorkers, convince them by listening and leading and listening to us, not compromising and cutting. These public comments have been illuminating. We have ideas, engage with us and our ingenuity. You have most likely not heard anything you did not already know, but we need you to listen. Do not get glazed over with our struggles. Keep us moving. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Henry Slim, followed by Ariel Lembeck. Henry Slim. The next speaker will be Ariel Lembeck, followed by Pityi Moon.
Hello, MTA leadership and board members. My name is Ariel Lembeck and I'm a transit rider. I oppose the MTA's proposal to raise fares on commuters like myself. Raising fares, especially for working New Yorkers who pour hours into the city's economic vitality and rely on the transit system to support their livelihoods, it's paramount that they have transit access, and that means affordable fares. In a city where the hustle is expected and the cost of living is extremely high, commuting shouldn't add to the financial burden. Increased fares discourage people from taking the train, which in turn is crucial to reducing carbon emissions and playing our part as a city in the fight against climate change. It also discourages people when they are asked to pay more money but don't see changes infrastructurally, such as major train delays, continuously broken ticket machines and stations that are dirty and unkempt. As we've seen from years past, an increase in fares doesn't solve these problems. So why do we keep relying on New Yorkers' dollars to fix them? The MTA needs help, but it should not come at the expense of working people. As a community organizer, an artist, a climate justice advocate, and a tax-paying citizen of this city, I know that transit will play a massive role in New York City's recovery from the coronavirus. Asking working-class New Yorkers, inclusive of essential workers, made up of disproportionately Black and brown folk, to bear the brunt when they have lost so much Social Security is far from the just recovery we need. By eliminating the weekly and monthly passes, you are targeting those who power our city and have no choice but to ride the train every day. The MTA needs money, to be sure. The pandemic has affected it just like everything else, but the burden should not fall on working New Yorkers to bail out the system. The Biden administration and our city state leaders must tax the rich as well as corporations that currently pay no or low taxes to fund the MTA. It is our only chance for a complete economic recovery. As
Please
such, I
conclude
urge
your remarks.
the board to vote against any fare increases and against eliminating time-based passes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Pit Yi Moon, followed by Christopher Canale.
Good evening, everyone. I'm working for a small business in Brooklyn. I live in Staten Island. Due to the lack of direct transportation to my office, I'm driving Monday through Friday from Staten Island to Prospect Park in Brooklyn. Losing the resident discount will severely jeopardize my ability to travel to work. I cannot afford to pay full price on the toll. I might have to quit working for the small business just to look for a job that doesn't require me crossing the bridge at such exorbitant price. If I'm paying into the Staten Island toll, it's only fair that the money is being used to better the infrastructure, increase the public transportation options for people in this place, which I do not think is the case currently. I mean, it's been 56 years of tolling at the Verrazano Bridge. How many more years does it take for the bridge to get paid off? Is that like a plan to keep this a toll bridge forever? Staten Islanders are paying one of the highest toll price in the nation. Other boroughs in the city doesn't have to pay as much as us to get back home. So I'm really hoping you guys can consider the option to raise the toll price. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Christopher Canale, followed by Michael Dunlop. There will be a brief transition as you are enabled to turn on your camera and microphone. Please make sure that once your screen updates, your camera and microphone are enabled, and then begin your remarks. In addition, if you've joined this Zoom under a name that is not what you registered to speak under, please identify yourself in the Q&A function. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Christopher Canale, and I'm a New York State registered nurse and a resident of Staten Island. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to express my disdain for the proposed continuation of the Staten Island resident Verrazano Bridge toll discount and rebate program. This proposed action is in response to MTA budget shortfalls due to the COVID pandemic. During this pandemic, essential workers continue to respond to the needs of the city, myself included. Staten Island is home to approximately 22% of civil servants and a vast amount of essential workers not employed by the city, whom commute to the various boroughs to provide essential services daily. Removing the resident discount will cause additional fiscal strain on these everyday heroes and their families during these difficult times. According to Census.gov, approximately 476,000 people call Staten Island home. Approximately 21.8% are under 18 years of age, 16.7% are 65 years and older. These numbers represent 38% of the total Staten Island population that are generally not commuting daily via the Verrazano Bridge. Out of the remaining 62%, approximately 35,000 utilize mass transit to commute daily. This means that approximately 261,000 will potentially utilize the bridge daily to commute to work. This means that because there is such poor mass transit infrastructure on the island, half the population must rely on their own personal vehicles to get to their jobs outside of the borough to earn a living. I present these numbers so you can recognize how vital the Verrazano Bridge is to the residents and why it is necessary to maintain the current discount and rebate program. Economically, this will be debilitating to the island. The amount of money spent on tolls by Staten Island residents will increase from $27.50 to $61.20 weekly. This is an annual increase of roughly $1,600. In this city where people just scrape by, this increase may represent the straw that breaks many household budgets. Other long-term effects of eliminating this discount is that it will have negative impact on home values and will continue to force more people away from the city. This will decrease future tax revenue and revenue spent on the minuscule amount of transit available to the island residents. Perhaps the MTA should look at internal means of closing their budget gaps, utilizing lean methodology and eliminating waste that is present throughout the MTA system. One proposal would be
Please
to increase the
conclude your
price
remarks.
for five-axle tractor trailers. The current Easy Pass rate for these vehicles is $60.38, which is a bargain compared to other bridges, which range from $82 to $95. If you take these programs away, you are hurting the families. This should not be how the MTA should treat a borough that
Please
contributes so
conclude your
much service
remarks.
to the city. Please consider these points when you make your final decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michael Dunlap, followed by Kayla Preston.
Good evening. My name is Michael Dunlap, and I am a transit rider within the 5 boroughs of New York City. Thank you for allowing the public to speak their opinions on the potential fare and toll increases. I would like to provide insight about a rumor that has been surfacing that the MTA is considering eliminating the 7-day and 30-day unlimited Metro cards. I'd like to speak on why I think this is a detrimental idea, both for the MTA and for consumers. As far as a business standpoint is concerned, the elimination of the 7-day and 30-day unlimited Metro cards would virtually eliminate the market for casual riders. Obviously, many people rely on public transit in New York City for work and school, including the brave, heroic essential workers. I do too. I know that, however, personally, I can attest to my willingness to walk more places than I did when I was getting a 30-day unlimited Metro card prior to the pandemic. On average, personally, even after the pandemic is over, I feel that I will only spend an average of around $60 a month on public transportation should the unlimited cards be eliminated rather than the $127 that is in effect now. I enjoy knowing that each ride makes an unlimited card more worth it rather than knowing no matter how much I ride, it will cost me the same and therefore making me want to walk more than take transit. I feel other New Yorkers feel the same. This will cause for both a decrease in upfront revenue for the MTA as well as total monthly revenue. Subways and buses will hopefully run at the same times regardless, so why not maximize your revenue and maximize your ridership statistics? From a consumer standpoint, casual ridership will fall with the lack of an unlimited Metro card. This will make people really need to consider whether or not to visit local stores, restaurants, bars, and shops outside of the neighborhood in which they reside. This will only further contribute to the struggling economy. Prior to and after the pandemic, I would have no doubt in my mind that I would want to go spend time and money in different neighborhoods if an unlimited Metro card were available to me. In fact, it would increase the value of my Metro card each time I swiped it. Having to pay the same fare each time, however, would make me have second thoughts about it. This will contribute
Please conclude your remarks.
MTA revenue. I thank you for your time, and I hope you will reconsider your thought to eliminate the 7-day and 30-day. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Kayla Preston, followed by Joan Alexander Baki-Ridden.
Hello. I didn't know that I was going to be a speaker, but my name is Kayla Preston. I'm a registered nurse of New York State. And I basically agree with what the speakers have said, that I've stopped using an unlimited Metro card because it's not beneficial to me. I take the train every single day with no days off. And it doesn't benefit me to use an unlimited Metro card. Because it's like, if I I don't always use the Metro card. I don't use it every single time. So it's like basically a waste. And similar to what the other gentleman was saying about the neighborhood, it's like, it's the same exact thing. If I need to get somewhere, I'm gonna go to my neighborhood rather than getting on the train, because it's a waste of money. And I think that you guys also need to consider, like, this should be the highest the fare ever goes, because it's ridiculous. I make a good wage in New York City as a registered nurse, but people don't make as much money as I do. And you're gonna have a continuation of people trying to jump the fare because they have places to go and they can't afford it. And you see it all the time, every day. If you guys would just think about the community members, and I see that there's a lack of diversity on your panel, and you guys need to think about considering the fact that these situations apply to minorities, Black people, and people who have to take the train on a regular basis. I know that probably doesn't apply to you guys. So just be considerate of your fellow community members, your fellow community, because we do need you guys to be considerate of stop hiking up fares in general, and definitely don't hike up an unlimited fare. You.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Joan Alexander Baki-Ridden, followed by Gabriella McDonald.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for hosting this panel and allowing everyone the opportunity to be heard. I join my voice to Representative Biaggi and many others who have already spoken before me. I just wanted to amplify the parts where we've heard the concerns of our community. The fares increasing will impact our neighbors, the ones who do not have enough in general. And now because of a potential increase from $1 to $4 just to purchase a Metro card, and then the eradication of the multi-use cards, and now the increase of tolls to come from Staten Island into the city, which is where most of the business is being held, creates an undue burden to our neighbors. So I ask that you please consider our community, consider your neighbors who are not fortunate enough to have cars and to be able to get to the locations where they serve as nurse, doctor, teacher, restaurant owner, just in general terms, just your neighbors who will be severely impacted by another increase to our fares with a decrease in infrastructure improvements, primarily because of COVID and otherwise. But I see I'm running out of time. I just wanted to make sure that I amplify the voices of others that have already spoken and the voices of my neighbors who have spoken to me to express their concern of another fare increase without the corresponding improvements to infrastructure. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and please have a wonderful holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Gabriella McDonald, followed by David Carr.
Hi, good evening. My name is Gabriella McDonald. I'm a 3L at CUNY School of Law. I'm coming here to oppose MTA's proposed changes to increase the fares. As a 1L traveling to school, I was unable to take advantage of the Fair Fares program due to me working full-time prior to starting law school. And as a result of that, it was pretty much a decision, between buying my Metro card for me to be able to commute to school daily or getting breakfast or lunch. And while I know I'm fortunate enough to have a job throughout my educational years, I know a lot of CUNY students aren't as fortunate. With these proposed changes, I just wonder how many CUNY students are going to go without food in order just to get to school. I know the pandemic we're learning virtually, but still that's something that's a big concern for me, because I know what that's like. I mean, the 30-day Metro card even going up to $139, that's, although it's only $12 difference, that still is $12 that, could buy 2 meals depending on where where in New York City that a person lives. I urge you all to consider the impact that this will have on CUNY students, as well as bachelor's and graduate students, because this is really going to be impactful in addition to cutting service with the increase of fares. So I urge you to take CUNY students into consideration, and if it's at all possible, to avoid raising fares. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be David Carr, followed by Eileen Martin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Carr, and I'm a candidate for the 50th Council District here on Staten Island. I've testified over the years at a number of toll hearings held by the MTA and the Port Authority in my capacity as Chief of Staff to the man I hope to succeed, Minority Leader Stephen Matteo. But never before have I been so concerned that these hearings could lead to such a terrible outcome, namely the reduction or even the elimination of the Staten Island resident discount on the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. We all know that these are unprecedentedly difficult times for businesses and government agencies alike, and the MTA is no exception. But we cannot hope to balance the MTA's budget difficulties on the backs of Staten Islanders. Over 120 years ago, Staten Island was promised a rail connection to the rest of the region as part of the campaign to incorporate what would become the 5 boroughs into the greater city of New York. Over a century later, that promise remains unfulfilled. Staten Island continues to be the most underserved borough in terms of transit in our city, and we are the only New Yorkers that have to pay for the privilege of leaving and entering our home. One of the most important steps forward for borough equity has been our resident discount and its enhancement in 2014 that brought tolls down to $5.50 round trip. While it may not make up for the lack of transit options, it was a huge step forward for Staten Islanders and saved them thousands of dollars since. Any proposal to reduce or do away with this hard-won discount ignores the fact that Staten Islanders can ill afford to be paying more out of pocket when their businesses are forced to close or reduce service, and when wage workers are laid off because government support has been up for these businesses or never materialized. Some estimates for these proposals put the potential yearly toll bill at nearly as high as $3,000. This cannot stand. I implore the MTA to do the right thing and seek their savings elsewhere and preserve the Staten Island resident discount as is. Thank you for your time and happy holidays.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Eileen Martin, followed by Larry Rubenstein. Please unmute your microphone.
Good afternoon. I am Eileen Martin, a Staten Island resident. We are an island with no subway service connecting us to Manhattan or the other boroughs. Yes, we have ferry and bus service, and yes, we can take advantage of the One City, One Fare program. However, traveling to Queens, Bronx, or uptown Manhattan via public transportation can take up to 2 hours or more. If I drive, taking the Verrazano Bridge, it cuts the time drastically. And if during non-rush or late night hours, it becomes a much safer mode of traveling. We have 4 bridges available to access and exit this island, all of which have exorbitant tolls. Staten Islanders have always been burdened with increasing tolls or other methods introduced by the agencies to heighten our cost. For example, denoting Saturdays and Sundays as rush hours, thereby causing a more expensive toll to be charged. The MTA for years has suffered deficits, and I realize this year is unlike any other. But it is the lower and middle classes who are impacted the most by these proposed cuts and increases. In addition to seeking state and federal aid, it is time to look for other ways to reduce costs, trim the fat, and become a more efficient agency so the paying public are not relied on so often to foot the bill. I strongly request that subway bus fares are not increased, discount Metro card offers are not reduced or rescinded, and especially the Staten Island resident discount toll not be decreased or eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Larry Rubenstein, followed by Sam Pirozzolo.
Oh, hang on, trying to get back here. And here we go. Okay, my audio on?
Yes,
I
please
guess so.
begin your remarks.
Okay, good evening. My name is Larry Rubenstein, and I've been a commuter on the Long Island Railroad, subways, and buses for over 40 years. I've seen many ups and downs over those years, especially with the Long Island Railroad. The world is a different place today than it was 40 years ago. Over the course of time, companies and commuters had to change and adapt to the current COVID world or be left behind. Companies had to remold and reorganize just to stay in business. We know the MTA is going through a financial hardship. We have no idea if the federal government is going to save the MTA with stimulus money. There have been reports that ridership will come back within the year. Well, if you think ridership is going to come back to levels pre-COVID in the near future, you're going to have a very rude awakening. We need to look at the situation realistically. Commuters have learned to work differently. Commuters are not nor need to commute on a daily basis anymore. They have learned a new skill to work from home or remotely. It's time for the MTA to adapt and to change to this new workforce. Monthly tickets are going to be a thing of the past. I personally don't think you're going to get that ridership back for many years. It's time for the MTA to start and think outside the box. If you want to travel into the city now on the railroad, a 4-person family from Belmore, where I live, to New York is going to cost you $112. Why in the world would you use a train when you can drive and park for $20 and come and go on your own timetable? Raise the price more and that ridership is going to disappear. You're proposing a fare increase. Well, you're going to chase away the people that you want to ride the trains. You're putting another nail into your own coffin. It's time again to adapt and change on the Long Island Railroad. You already have 10 trip discounted tickets, maybe have 20 or 40 trip discount tickets with a 1-year expiration date. People might commute 1 or 2 times a week with the idea that the MTA can at least get some revenue and maybe some more ridership. Maybe it's time to sell dormant or unused property that the MTA owns. Shorten trains, but keep overcrowding in mind. Make it simple and tell the public in a 1-paragraph what you are doing to make riding on the train safe. A 2-page rah-rah team press release is insane. Lay it out simply. Show people why it's safe
Please
to ride the
conclude your remarks.
Instituting a fare increase now will aid in destroying the economy of the region. Think
Thank
about
you.
the present, look into the future.
Our next speaker will be Sam Pirozzolo, followed by Greg McMurray.
Hello, my name is Sam Pirozzolo. I'm also a lifelong Staten Island resident, and I have to drive across the Verrazano Bridge every day. I work in another borough. I doubt that there's really much more that I can say to this board that's going to influence any decision that they are told to make. So I'd like to take this time to address my fellow Staten Islanders and my fellow New York City residents. The board that you see here before you is mostly appointed by Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio, and some of the local officials of Long Island. These are the people who really hold the power to increase or not increase your tolls. It's really not the members here. These members, as I said, are appointed, they are not elected, and they take their cues from the people who appoint them. I don't mean any disrespect to the members, but in reality, New Yorkers and Staten Islanders really need to focus their anger, their angst, and their dislike toward their local elected officials who are in the state Senate and the state Assembly. I think that you can see there have been articles in the newspapers about the mismanagement of the MTA, MTA employees that have been abusing the pension system. I would like to suggest to this board that you turn your gaze to within the MTA system, cut corruption, cut mismanagement, and stop picking the pockets of hardworking New Yorkers who have been affected by not only daily life, but this COVID pandemic. So please leave us alone, look internally, and get the money which you need from your own pockets. Leave my pockets alone. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Greg McMurray, followed by Nizar Alvarez.
Hello.
Hello, please begin your remarks.
Hi, my name is Greg McMurray. I'm a subway commuter. I want to focus my comments on the assessment and reports from McKinsey, the firm you draft to write summaries of the economic and legislative landscape and how it affects the MTA. Mentioned in McKinsey's recent report is the $12 billion in federal aid you're hoping to obtain, but we all know that this is just a temporary loan. The loan would only add to the debt the MTA already owes, estimated at about $35 billion. If the aid came through, it would bring the total amount of debt to around $50 billion by 2024. Debt service already accounts for 16% of the MTA's annual budget, and with that loan, it would increase to 25%. Doesn't seem the McKinsey report is examining the full suite of options to solve the complex problems of the MTA. My question is, in addition to fare hikes and service cuts, why do we always have to focus on federal assistance and federal aid? Why can't there be a discussion of New York State taxes? An existing federal proposal that our city could adopt is a tax on Wall Street transactions. In this plan, any stocks traded would be taxed at the rate of 0.5%, bonds at 0.1%, and derivatives at 0.005%. Congressional Budget Office estimated the potential revenue from this would be $776 billion over a decade. Now, I'm not asking for that. A similar, smaller plan from the city and state on a smaller scale could raise much needed relief. As we know, Wall Street has been doing fine during the pandemic. To summarize, the tax hike subway fare that you're requesting us to pay is affecting people that can afford it the least. Why not ask Wall Street to kick in? Why not get the pied-à-terre tax passed and the increase the progressive mansion tax to be at a higher rate for homes sold at over $25 million? Look at these solutions along with every other option in a suite of solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Nizar Alvarez, followed by Tisha O.
Hello?
Hello, please begin your remarks.
Okay, so first and foremost, I've always noticed that the MTA has they always say the same thing, that they have fare hikes are coming up, it's every 2 years, and there's always budget deficits. So I've always noticed that the MTA seems to also go after the fare evaders. I've noticed that lately, in these past couple of years and months, more cops are on the subway, but they're not on the platform. Instead, they're on the entrances, excuse me. And it just seems outrageous that the MTA is spending all this money to go after the fare evaders instead of looking at what they're spending on. I remember a couple months ago, the MTA spent about $80 million to build an elevator on, I think it was the 181st Street station on the 1 line. $80 million, that's a lot of money. And they're also spending a lot of money on all these ads to prevent fare evasion. Fine, if you want to go after the fare evaders, that's fine. But that's not going to solve the problem here. And the other thing is that the MTA has been talking about declining ridership, but yet they still want to raise fares. I don't know how you expect more riders to come back to the subway or the bus and expect them to pay more. I don't know anyone who wants to pay more. It never made any sense. It's not going to make any sense now, especially now that not everybody's riding the subway every single day or the buses. If you want to bring riders back, you cut fares by a lot. I would say back to what they were, I don't know, back in 2003. City Terminal Zone, make that a permanent thing and keep the fares to what they are. No more fare hikes because people can't afford them. A lot of people are also out of work. Not everybody is riding the trains or the buses. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tisha O, followed by Tiffany Nelson. As a reminder, there is a brief transition as you are unable to turn on your camera and microphone. Please be sure that once your screen updates, your camera and microphone are turned on and begin your remarks.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, please begin your remarks.
Good evening. My name is Tisha, and I'm a transit worker with the United Voices of New York City Transit. I'm here to tell you all that management behavior is unacceptable. We as employees of the New York City Transit Authority are treated unfairly, and management shows no gratitude for all the work we put in. We are first responders first and foremost. We worked through this pandemic with our ability to take our AVAs being suspended. We weren't able to take a day off just to even process what we were up against. And being on the front lines with no PPE from the MTA caused us to lose over 150 of our brothers and sisters. We get treated as if we're the bottom of the barrel. Now you're looking to impose a fare hike at a time like this. As much money that is taken from our customers by these machines that they are forced to use should be enough to settle the score. Why don't you guys start recouping most of the revenue that you're losing by bringing the money back to the booths? It won't only help your pockets, but it will also help the elderly and disabled who solely rely on the public transportation that they are left to fend for themselves because they don't know how to use the machines. Granted, we know that transit is moving forward with technology. Why should the public as well as the employees suffer due to the MTA's mismanagement of money? It's not right that our job security is currently relying on the stimulus package from the government, after we sacrificed our health and well-being for a company that could care less whether we live or die. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Tiffany Nelson, followed by Kim Sola.
Hello, can you see me?
Yes, please begin.
Hello, yes. My name is Tiffany Nelson. I'm a station agent. I've been with in the New York City Transit for 8 years as a station agent and 1 year as a cleaner, so 9 years altogether. My perspective of the fare increase and why it shouldn't happen is that a lot of people come to the station and they want to pay, and they do pay. But the problem is that a lot of the vending machines aren't working properly. So when the machines aren't working properly, it unmotivates the people who want to pay. Also, you have people who, just like my previous coworker said, are seniors and disabled, and it's very hard for them. Also, people with a bad language barrier, if they don't speak English, Spanish, it's hard for them. So using the machines are a little complicated, and it's very troublesome. So that aspect of it is all that customers are left with, because there's still no money inside the service booths, and most likely the money is not coming back. We're aware now that the customers who come to the station who are trying to pay, they come to the booth first. They don't go to the machine first. So it's like, I don't understand why that wouldn't come back. The other departments, as far as Long Island Railroad and Metro North, have had their funds back. So I think that that's one of the issues where they're losing revenue, and it's something that they should focus on. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Kim Sola, followed by Gabrielle Reichler.
Hello?
Yes, please begin your remarks.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kim Sola, and I'm a resident of Staten Island. I currently reside on the South Shore of Staten Island, and I take the Verrazano and all the bridges on Staten Island. So I'm speaking up on behalf of the tolls for the Verrazano increasing or eliminating the resident discount. I frequently use the bridge to go back and forth between Staten Island and Brooklyn. So if the fare was, the resident discount was removed, I would at all costs just avoid taking the Verrazano, as well as many residents if they're able to do that. And on behalf of just all workers on Staten Island that are currently unemployed, removing that discount is just going to affect everyone that may be out of work or not making enough money right now to be affected very negatively. So I really think the MTA should reconsider removing that discount and should really look inwards, as I was hearing some of the other participants saying, to find other ways to get funds and not take away a discount that really affects all Staten Islanders. We don't have any other means of good, reliable transportation besides the ferry, which even then, unless you live that close to the ferry, it's very difficult to get there and take the ferry. So I think that resident discount should really not go, and the MTA should really reconsider removing that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Gabrielle Reichler, followed by Aaron Butler.
My name is Gabriel Reichler. I am 22 years old. I've lived in New York my entire life now, and I am the child and grandchild of people who were born in this city as well. And I have been relying on the MTA for quite a long time to get to school, to medical appointments, to everything basically. And I have been weathering these fare hikes and having to pay higher fares and see declining service levels and infrastructure meanwhile. And I understand that having studied economics, I understand that the reality is that transit fares are an enormous waste of resources, and their elimination could actually pay for the savings caused by the elimination of transit fares could actually pay for other improvements such as to service, to infrastructure, expansions of the system, anything like that. And the only reason that transit fares actually exist in the first place is to feed Black and brown bodies to our racist for-profit prison industrial complex, to incarcerate and kill. I have actually, since the pandemic started and New York went on lockdown and there were service cuts, I have been refusing to pay any MTA fares whatsoever, and just been riding the system without paying fares. And I have recognized that I can do this because of my white privilege. But if I did not have a white skin, I would.
Please conclude your remarks.
I would be in Rikers Island dead right now.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Aaron Butler, followed by Harry Malakoff.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing the public to have a seat at the table. If only Congress could work the same. My name is Aaron Butler and I reside in Bushwick. I was a consistent user of the MTA, however, was laid off 3 months ago. So I now only rely on it for groceries, doctor's appointments, or job interviews. As we all know, this year is unlike any other, and I understand that our public transportation is at a crossroads. However, let's be honest. We all know that the MTA is going to be okay. The same cannot be assumed for the people of this city. I ask that this board put themselves in the shoes of the families experiencing hardship, struggling to pull together their coins for fare to buy groceries that they can barely afford to just feed their families. I ask you to put yourself in the shoes of the single mother or father unable to get to work on time or at all because they cannot afford the fare that day. I ask you to put yourself in the shoes of the unemployed people who are months behind on rent, burdened with student loans, unable to eat at times, and have to risk getting a fare evasion ticket because they jumped the turnstile to get to an interview for a job that they may not even get. Finally, I ask this board to table raising fares at this time because our economy has been devastated by a global health crisis. It should not be an option because there are so many other sensible ones. Keep the fares the same and do not cut service. Or better yet, consider lifting the fare burden of the hardworking people of the city. Consider taxing the wealthy or Wall Street. I implore the MTA to explore other options because this should not even be on the table right now as a consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Harry Malakoff, followed by Seth Rosenberg.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, please begin.
Thank you. We all acknowledge that the MTA faces major deficit. I have a suggestion for revenue enhancement, which will add a relatively small but important addition to the coffers. Crane's New York business estimated last year that New York City and New York State lose over $100 million annually to resident New York car owners who register their vehicles elsewhere. If New York City were to impose resident-only parking in much of the city, it would force those cheaters who represent as much as 30% of all car owners, just walk down any residential street, you'll see what I mean, to register properly. The newly found monies can go to the MTA, and we need this and other creative ideas to help the entire region. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Seth Rosenberg, followed by David Paul Geber.
My
Please
name is
unmute
Seth.
yourself.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you may begin. Thank you.
My name is Seth Rosenberg, and I'm a New York City subway operator and a proud member of the Local 100 Fight Back Coalition. The plan for the draconian fare hikes, service cuts, and layoffs in the transit system is outrageous. Transit workers and other essential workers have already sacrificed far too much. Fare hikes would force essential workers to pay more when they are already suffering. Service cuts make it harder for them to get to work and force them onto more crowded trains, putting their lives and health at risk. And the service cuts will cripple the future recovery, hurting workers for years to come. Local 100 lost over 130 members during the spring because of this board's refusal to put its own pandemic plan into effect, along with other basic safety measures. Make no mistake, you have blood on your hands. Even now, it is horribly unsafe for transit workers, with poorly ventilated, crowded underground crew rooms and other facilities. And yet you want to lay us off after calling us heroes? As usual, the bosses, managers, and politicians want working people, especially Black and Latino workers, to pay for the crisis. We say no, no more sacrifice on our end until the billionaires, banks, and Wall Street, who have profited enormously from the pandemic, pay their fair share. We must force Cuomo to sign the billionaires tax. We need to put the stock transfer tax back into effect and make Wall Street pay their fair share. During this unprecedented crisis, the MTA must use the capital budget for operating expenses and freeze their debt payments. Workers know that transit is under attack, but they are next. Workers need to unite and fight. That's why Local 100 and other groups are calling for a rally Wednesday, December 16th, 9 a.m. at 2 Broadway to stand against the austerity tax. We are calling on all transit riders, workers, and other essential workers to come out. Workers have sacrificed enough. Make the rich pay their fair
Please
share.
conclude your remarks.
No service cuts, no layoffs. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be David Paul Gerber, followed by Laura Timoney.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please begin.
Yeah, thank you. Hold on. David Paul Gerber, and I'm speaking on behalf of the couple of fare proposals. One of them, which is not really touched upon much at all, is the new proposed fare structure of Metro-North and Long Island Railroad. The fare structure is purely discriminatory. You have a city-to-city, a city-to-suburban, and suburban-only fare. In a suburban-only fare zone of Metro-North, White Plains and Stanford are among the two biggest employers. While Stanford's part of Connecticut, and that has to be done separately, White Plains has a high ridership of reverse commuters from along the Harlem line, especially between Fordham and Hartsdale. For them, the fare ranges from $73 to $82. This fare that you're proposing, this suburban fare or city suburban fare, would be jacked up to double to $160. The fare between that, the city, part of the city suburban, will also be, what, 200 something? I don't have the numbers, but it's purely discriminatory. That should be immediately, under all circumstances, be taken off. The biggest advantage are those who live up far north, a 10-mile river, Wasik, those who live in Poughkeepsie, they would have a fare cut. But meanwhile, you want to try to eliminate 7- and 30-day cards. Start with in-house. Start with catching more fraud than you did. Why it took so long for these employees to rack up $400,000 a year in base pay and overtime before they were caught? If I was
Please
working
conclude your
16 hours,
remarks.
in short, the 30-day unlimited MetroCard should be retained.
The next speaker will be Laura Timony, followed by Haiti de los Santos.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. I'm a Staten Island resident and I'm here to plead with you not to get rid of the Staten Island Resident Discount Program. As you've heard tonight, we don't have many ways on and off Staten Island. We're not connected to the rest of the city subway system at all. We have one little train that goes back and forth on the island, doesn't even reach the whole island. We've got no access to LIRR, Metro North. So anytime we want to drive, we have to drive on or off the island. We have to pay to get back home. The Verrazano Bridge is currently $19. And when you factor in the resident discount, that cost goes down to $5.50, which is a huge savings. The cost to the MTA to subsidize this program is $7 million a year, which is basically $1.76 for each toll. So $1.76 gets us down to that $5.50. The TBTA pays the other portion of that. So that's $7 million. So when I was brought up, we were taught, if you couldn't afford something, you either had to make more money or cut spending. The MTA spends $77 million in advertising. Maybe spend $70 million. Take that 7, put it towards the resident program, and it just, makes a huge difference. If our fares go up, if I have to commute 5 days a week, that's an extra $3,175 a year that we have to pay just to get on and off this island. It's a lot of money. We are a borough, as people have said, of first responders and essential workers. My husband's a retired police officer. We have to go into Mount Sinai for his World Trade Center care. My kids have to go to NYU to neurologists. To get on and off this island, if you could please keep the resident discount program, if you could listen to everybody else. It's tough times and we need to all work together here. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Haiti de los Santos, followed by Michael Steinfeld.
Hello?
Hello, please begin.
Hello?
Yes, you can begin your remarks.
Oh, fuck.
Ma'am, please begin your remarks. The next speaker will be Michael Steinfeld, followed by Brandon Cornell.
Get off this island unless you have to pay. No other borough has those kind of options. Come on, give us a break here. I'm a merchant service provider and I have to travel to all the boroughs and wherever it may take me. And this is, times are tough here with the pandemic. Many, I'd say almost 60% of our businesses are closed. That's not fair to us. It's a terrible time and we understand that. We've laid people off in order to help stabilize our own self. But You can't keep going on this way. You need to look internally. You've got a lot of savings that you can have, especially like somebody mentioned about the $400,000 that somebody makes. This is ridiculous. Come on, give us a break here. Who's monitoring who there? Its costs are out of control, whether it's the contractors, employees, and I don't say all the employees. You have a lot of great employees there that are courteous and take care of what they do. And you need to appreciate them. But the general public on Staten Island suffering to get off this island, whether you got to leave or come back, you got to pay. How about the other boroughs? Anybody ever asked them to pay? And come on, you're losing a lot of ridership because where's the people going that live in the city? They're moving to another city in another state. It's not fair. You need to look internally and get your costs under control. We are suffering here and we can't afford to have these kind of toll hikes. If anything, you should cut them off because Brooklyn, Queens, Rockaway can all get off their islands without a cost. It's not fair to us. We're supporting all these other entities throughout the years when the bridge was supposed to pay for itself for 20
Please
years.
conclude your remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Brandon Cornell, followed by Solomon Friedman.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you can begin.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brandon Cornell, and I'm a transit rider. Thanks for giving me the chance to speak. Like everybody here, I have a lot of resentment towards the fare hikes and the service cuts. I think it's outrageous that fares are raised so frequently with little to show for it. Although service got slightly better since 2016, New Yorkers aren't getting close to what they pay for. It feels like New Yorkers are being exploited and held hostage. There needs to be more sympathy for transit riders, specifically for minority groups. I need you all to put yourself in the shoes of these riders. I think the MTA has a terrible problem with money management. There are countless reports of overtime abuse, contractor corruption, workers getting paid for not even showing up, etc. Even though the pandemic did decrease ridership, we would be in a better place if money management was better. For example, the funds used on Omni could have been used on a situation just like this, a rainy day fund. Additionally, it could have been focused on more signal improvements such as widespread CBTC rollout. Although I'm trying to stay optimistic, it seems that these fare hikes are inevitable, and us New Yorkers will have to suffer for the incompetence of the MTA. Essential employees who have been the backbone of the city will face the brunt of these fare hikes and service cuts. After all these employees have done for us, this is no way to thank them. I would love to see more accessible, discounted fare programs for these low-income New Yorkers. A fixed fare across all income levels isn't fair. I hope after all this nonsense is done, a fair audit can be performed on the MTA's expenses. There needs to be a labor restructuring done to restrict contractors from exploiting the MTA's funds. These spending habits are sustainable, and again, not for the people of New York City. Thank you, and happy holidays.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Solomon Friedman, followed by Roy Lee.
Hello, my name is Solomon Friedman. I'm a transit rider and I work at a hospital, and I've been using the bus and trains to commute throughout the pandemic. And I think for people who use unlimited MetroCard in addition to commuting to work, and if they have to make more than one transfer, and getting rid of that would increase their commuting expense greatly. I think now is not the time to do fare hikes because people are suffering enough throughout this pandemic. And I think projects like Omni should be put on hold till there's money for it. And I think now's not the time to do service cuts either. People who work in a hospital start their shift at 7 in the morning. They have to leave early to get there on time, and they have to travel on weekends and holidays. And I think there should be bus and trains available at the hours that essential workers need to commute if any cuts were to be made. And I think everyone should pay the same fare. I think fares are unfair, and I think MTA employees can also pay fares as well to commute to work. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Roy Lee, followed by Laura St. Jean.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming in. I am a transit rider. And, one of the things that, in addition to, I just feel that it's always overtaxing or increasing fare. I feel like that's always the only option for the MTA. I think money management is crucial. For example, Fast Track saved a ton of money back in the day. Charging someone a new MetroCard fee generated the MTA $22 million. Using software, I have a software background. For example, you can utilize touch technology to see how many buses are utilized during a certain day. And driving an empty bus down an entire route is just a huge waste. You can hook up a $30 Raspberry Pi onto this bus, track the number of users, and from there you can decide using predictive modeling to decide how many buses you're going to route out every day. That will save tons of money for the MTA. Managing overtime. For example, I think there's an employee that made $400,000 more than the president of the US, right, in 2018. And this person is also, and this is not the only person, they're getting a pension of $150,000 a year. I just find that like missing that is huge. And charging the riders, like making us flip the bill is not the initial option I think we should look at. Management should trump all this because even if we gave you $1 billion, right, or billions over the course of the year, if money management isn't there, the MTA will ask for another bailout. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Laura St. Jean, followed by Christopher Greif.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, please begin.
So first of all, I'd like to wish season greetings to you all, and thank you for this opportunity. As an employer, rather an employee of City University of New York, I have to say I do appreciate that MTA saw the need to allow us to ride the buses and not the trains free of charge. And due to remote working, there was quite limited use in my particular area. But on the occasion that I would go on site on campus to handle much needed work, I found that the concern, at least amongst some of my coworkers, my supervisors, was not so much about the fare, but more about the safety. The fare is going to be an issue, of course, but some people, if they had to go in, they would drive. Parking became an issue though, because we had outdoor dining. In that particular area where I work, of Brew College, there were several streets that were blocked off due to outdoor dining. So parking is going to become an issue, has become an issue. Increasing the fare is not the answer. Also, I acknowledge that if I didn't write in occasionally, I honestly wouldn't have known about these hearings. I see it posted on a bus or somewhere in the train, but it isn't anywhere else. So I feel like all the paper that was used, posted on buses and trains, was essentially for people who actually ride and who can pass the information along that way. Ultimately, it wasn't something that people who weren't necessarily checking on the MTA's website would have been able to see. So I think fund appropriation needs to be reconsidered with the MTA. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Christopher Greif, followed by Omar Vera.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Christopher D. Greif, as a member of the ACT member, as well as ACT as other advocates for people with disabilities. I would like to remind that regarding the Long Island Railroad, Metro North subways, and yes, and other transportation that MTA uses, getting rid of the monthly and the 7-day pass will not solve anything. My fellow disability groups, as well as seniors, do not want to see this being discontinued because they use it for easy budget for Social Security, Medicare, and they do use it because it's part of their budget. People with disabilities who also part of OPWDD, which they do keep track of their budget when they use the monthly passes. The 30-day pass is the easiest way for them to travel on the subways and buses. And with Omni coming in soon, this will be a great access to them. We also, like we understand right now, you have to hold on to the capital project. I hope our federal government, as well as our state officials, please make sure that the funding comes in for future money that makes sure that elevators, ramps, new buses, updated trains are there. We need this for all areas in the system. Please make sure, guys, before you jump to conclusion of any voting, please remind yourselves that we have people with disabilities, seniors, and low-income families cannot afford some of these fare hikes. It will hurt them very much. We need to make sure that if they want it, they are coming back, but they will be there on the subways and buses, Long Island Railroad and Metro North. But again, we need to work together to make sure our future ADA compliance is up to date every year. Thank you. Have a great day and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Omar Vera, followed by Jason Anthony.
On mute. All right. Can anyone hear?
Yes, please begin.
All right. All right. Greetings, MTA. Welcome back to another public hearing session. First of all, let me just apologize for going over the 2-minute limit and being off topic on Monday. And I'm so sorry about that. But with that said, all I have to do now is all we have to do now is just basically just don't increase any fares. Just keep it like I suggested before, just $2 and the way it was back in the greater part of the 00's decade. And yeah, and hopefully once this pandemic's done, we can get back to congestion pricing and other things. And yeah, that's all I have to say for tonight. And I'll see you all next Monday then. So take care then. Bye.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Jason Anthony.
Yes, good evening. Jason Anthony, Vice President, Passengers United, and social media member for the Congress of Essential Workers. Tonight, I'm going to speak as an essential worker that worked during the pandemic. I worked in Amazon Fulfillment Center in Staten Island. We saw during the beginning of the pandemic, co-workers of mine getting sick and being in a packed S40 bus that obviously is not paid by Amazon, that's owned by the richest man in the whole wide world. It's paid by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, MTA for short. But one thing is clear, we cannot afford another fare and toll increase. Instead, I will say to those who live in Richmond County, in other words, Staten Island, to support a gas tax instead of complaining about their resident discount. Because a gas tax will not only save them, it will save everyone. It will benefit the MTA, just like those in the other side of the Hudson did with New Jersey Transit, and New Jersey Transit is not doing service cuts and nothing else. So as an essential worker, we're not gonna afford to pay more. Let's say cut the contracts with consultants and Anthony McCord has to go. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The time is now 7:06 p.m. At this time, we will be taking a brief break and will resume at 7:16 p.m. During the break, please feel free to take the voluntary survey, which will be visible on your screen, to assist us in understanding the effectiveness of our outreach for these hearings. The hearing will conclude at 7:21 p.m. if we have further registered speakers. When we resume, I will call through the remaining list of registered speakers who have not joined us or had technical difficulties. Again, if you are registered to speak this evening but haven't heard your name called during the break, please provide your name you registered under in the Q&A function and you will be called after the break. Thank you. The time is now 7:16 p.m. and we will now resume the hearing. As I mentioned before the break, we have several speakers registered for tonight's hearing who have either not joined us or were having technical difficulties. I will call through the remaining speakers now. As a reminder, if you joined the hearing under a different name than you registered under or were registered and haven't heard your name called, please indicate that in the Q&A function now. The next speaker will be Henny Slim, Elisa Cappers, Maya Faison, Yufeng He, Jonah Lowenthal, Claudio Prats, Shervin Abdul Hamadi, Alexander Rosenvit, Eric Chechanowski, Sarah Sorori, Jeanne Morit,
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Janae Moret. I am a station agent from New York City Transit, and I am a member of the United Voices of New York City Transit. Throughout this pandemic, my coworkers and I, we have worked tirelessly and often without a thank you from management. With that being said, while at work, we see what goes on a daily basis. We see that in the transit system, how revenue is not being collected and ridership isn't down. Payment is down. It is a slap in the face to our customers to impose a fare hike and service cuts in the midst of a pandemic. If you will bring back the fare into the booths, you can recoup your funds. You are not providing proper customer service by making customers use faulty machines. You're turning your backs on your customers that come from all walks of life. Go back to the drawing board and figure out new ways to bring revenue to New York City Transit. That's the end of.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Sarah Hughes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please begin.
Hi, my name is Sarah Hughes. Thank you for opening the floor to public comment today. I'm a transit rider living in Kensington, Brooklyn. I lived in New York for almost 15 years, and I use the subway, bus, and Metro North to go to work, get to medical appointments, shop for groceries, visit family outside of the 5 boroughs. I strongly oppose the MTA's proposal to raise fares on commuters. Since I've lived in New York, I've watched fares rise and become less and less affordable for working New Yorkers as wages have stagnated for many. This year in particular has obviously been extraordinarily hard on working New Yorkers and their incomes, especially essential workers who most rely on public transit. Public transit plays and will continue to play a primary role in New York City's recovery from the coronavirus. My entire industry, in fact, the theater industry, which generates many billions of dollars for New York City and state, relies on the ability of not only workers, but thousands of audience members to affordably be able to travel to attend live performances. Without affordable public transit, my industry will be unable to recover from the pandemic. Additionally, public transit is essential for stopping climate change, which New York State can really be a leader in. And quoting from your mission statement, it enhances the quality of life and the economic health of our region's economy. The MTA needs increased funding, but it should not come from the pockets of the working New Yorkers who have no other option except to ride public transit. New York has 118 billionaires who collectively saw their wealth increase by $77.3 billion during the first 3 months of the COVID pandemic. And even as the state's economy was reeling from a huge spike in joblessness and a collapse in taxes collected, there's a bill in the state Senate right now, co-sponsored by Alessandra Biaggi, who we heard from earlier, to tax these billionaires, create a worker bailout fund. Additional taxes like these on billionaires and corporations can raise up to $50 billion or more in new annual revenue for New York State. And it's measures like these that should be used
Please
to make up,
conclude your remarks.
not the, raising the fares on the workers. The MTA has the
Thank
power
you.
to change it.
The next speaker will be Medina Durakovic.
Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Medina Durakovic, and I'm from Queens, New York. I've lived here all my life. Many people, including me, can't afford cars and rely on trains and buses to get to work. Raising the fare, especially during a pandemic, is inhumane. So many working class people in New York have been laid off, had to shut down their small businesses. We can't even pay for our rent. All we got was one stimulus check. One. Unemployment is so backed up, it's taken months for people to get their payment. I know that there's a shortage of money, but tell me how Cuomo was offered a $25,000 pay raise, but there's no money for the MTA. Tell me how the NYPD gets $11 billion from NYC's budget, but there's no money for the MTA. I think there is money. I just think that New York City does not want to spend it on us working class New Yorkers. I understand this is difficult for the MTA, but to pin this on us to solve this is not fair. We are the heart of New York, not the upper class, us. We work the minimum wage jobs no one else wants. Our immigrant families are the diversity you boast about. We are what makes the city run, not the millionaires, us. We are the ones taking public transit. We deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Gilrain, Lila Kipola, Robert Saccone, Shakima Days, Jay Julio, Jen C., Manuel Ortiz, Roy Fishman. Please remember to enable your camera and unmute your microphone. Karen Broughton, Brian Middendorf.
Hello.
Please begin.
Yes, good evening. I understand the MTA, the government, businesses, and people have all taken a big hit during this pandemic. I also read where the MTA estimated their losses at $159 million during the rear door boarding from March until August of 2020. In December of 2019, the House of Representatives passed a budget of $1.4 trillion, which included split tolling. Our local representatives in Congress said all discounts for Staten Islanders will remain in place. We are the only borough that cannot directly connect to the rest of the city without a toll of sorts. We pay the Verrazano Bridge toll. We pay the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel toll if we want. And when this congestion pricing come in, we're going to be paying that as well. What do the other boroughs pay? they can actually ride around the city for free. Will the Rockaway resident discount go away? They pay $1.31 to cross the Marine Parkway Bridge or the Cross Bay Bridge with Easy Pass, which amounts to $5.05 less than the $6.36 that Staten Island pays. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anthony Wilkie. Patricia Flynn. Haiti De Los Santos. Craig Wallenstein. Christopher Green.
Hello.
Yes, please begin your testimony.
My name is Haiti De Los Santos. I would like to bring up 3, maybe 4 different things. One, yes, some people have said that removing the money out of the token booth is a very negative thing. And then that has something to do with that Omni thing and the Have Fair card. There are disabled people and elderly people that mentally cannot handle all that digital stuff inside all of that financial stuff with the bank. And then that wouldn't be a good idea. Then there are two other things. Cutting service and cutting staff is a combination. You cut staff, then it ends up with less service. Less service with less trains and less buses. You end up crowding the trains more than they already are. And then one question, would you like to be responsible for the people that might be getting sick with COVID, only this time in the trains? And don't forget, some people might be doing it by accident, unintentionally, and some people can be doing it on purpose on the trains. And then that problem will just be going up and up and up in the trains, and that would be very negative. So think about the Metro cards for the elderly and disabled. Think about.
Please summarize your remarks.
Don't worry, I just have 2 more words to say. Cutting the service would be very negative. Taking employees away, that would also be very negative. And
the next speaker will be Christopher Green.
How you doing? Yeah, this is Christopher Green. I'm a conductor at the New York City Transit Authority. You hear me, right?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, rules and regulation conduct of employees, section 10C, employees must treat all customers and their fellow employees with courtesy, avoid argument and exercise patience, forbearance, and self-control under all conditions. They must be attentive and helpful without being offensive. The comments I've been hearing from these panelists is very disheartening. I worked through the whole COVID. Right now, I'm shopping in the store, disregard my background, and never took a day off. Thank God I had never been sick. And to hear of the firing of the workers and they should disband the union and fire the workers is very disheartening and very, very disrespectful. And I expect you guys, the board members, to have our backs, which has not been the case. People have been tweeting to MTA subways, at our Twitter center, at RCC. They've been very disrespectful. I've read in comments and tweets about other customers actually inviting transit workers to their privates and tweeting about it. And they respond, the New York City Transit Authority, with, "Oh, we're sorry for your experience." How could you be disrespecting us? And additionally, I expect more lobbying to the government from you guys. And y'all need to go down to Washington and actually, instead of asking people what you should do, go down there and go fight for your money. And the Staten Island situation, you heard it from me first. You should run the Romeo, which is the R train, under the Verrazano Bridge and have some subway service connecting Brooklyn to Staten Island. That'll fix all your problems. Thank you. And I hope to see you guys in the field. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Smith, Michelle Riccio, Michael Spatola, Willie Perry, Roy Fishman. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This concludes the 6th of 8 virtual fare and toll hearings. Please visit new.mta.info/2020 hearings to register for an upcoming hearing. As a final reminder, in addition to the virtual hearings, there are several other ways you can provide comments, ask questions, or make requests. We encourage the public to comment via the Fare and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings. You may also send a letter to MTA Government and Community Relations, re Fares and Crossing Changes Virtual Public Hearing, 2 Broadway, New York, New York, 10004, or call the public hearing hotline at 646-252-6777. Telephone agents are available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Thank you.